News when you want it with Bloomberg News Now. I'm Monica Ricks. Axios reports President Trump is asking for amendments to a deal negotiated with Iran, including strengthening sections around Iran's nuclear material. Here's what he told his daughter-in-law, Laura Trump, on Fox News last night.
One guarantee that I have to have is that there will be no nuclear weapons. They've agreed to that. And it was very interesting. They originally said, we will not develop a nuclear weapon. I said, well, what happens if you buy a nuclear weapon? So now it says we will not develop or in any way purchase a military weapon.
Trump's also mentioned he has concerns about unfreezing Iranian funds, something he's criticized former President Obama about in the past. And reopening the Strait of Hormuz is also a big priority. But Bloomberg's Jeff Mason tells us we're in a holding pattern.
The president has a lot of competing interests here. He obviously wants to get out of this war. He's got a lot of political reasons for that. But he, as the deal maker in chief and as the guy who sort of built both a business and a political career on being a deal maker, he doesn't want it to come out and be one that isn't great. And there are plenty of Republicans who are worried that that's exactly what he's going to do.
Bloomberg's Jeff Mason on Bloomberg This Weekend. Israeli troops have captured a strategic mountain that includes Beaufort Castle, which is a well-known military stronghold in southern Lebanon. It's their deepest incursion into the country in more than a quarter century and comes days after intense fighting and airstrikes with Hezbollah. Bloomberg's Donna Craich covers the Middle East.
Hezbollah entered the war on Iran when the U.S. and Israelis struck Tehran and killed, of course, the former supreme leader. And the first attack by Hezbollah was to avenge Khamenei. And that just proves how close they are to the Iranians, how linked religiously and militarily to the Iranians. And they didn't stop ever since.
Bloomberg's Middle East correspondent Donna Craich on Bloomberg This Weekend. The Israeli military says it wanted to remove direct threats to Israeli civilians and is ready to expand the operation if needed. The U.S., Britain, and Australia have now signed an agreement to produce cutting-edge technology for underwater military drones. According to The Telegraph, this deal involves developing new technology such as weapons and sensors that can be deployed from uncrewed underwater vehicles. The project is expected to deliver its first equipment as early as next year. SpaceX is on track for an historic initial public offering in the coming weeks, but investors may already be cooling on that $2 trillion valuation. Benedict Campbell is Bloomberg's managing editor for space and aviation.
What we are seeing now is the managing banks going to investors, getting a feel from the market. What is the demand out there? And they're lowballing it. And maybe you're coming in with a slightly lower expectation, and then you blow that out of the water. So that might well be what's going on right now. You don't want to overpromise and then deliver.
That's Bloomberg's Benedict Campbell on Bloomberg This Weekend. SpaceX aims to raise $75 billion in that listing, and it's expected to be a market spectacle as investors get a chance to buy into Musk's vision to create a combined space and AI powerhouse. Homeland Security is backing off demands for green card applicants to go home. Bloomberg's Dan Schwartzman explains.
The Department of Homeland Security has clarified that highly qualified and skilled green card applicants will see no noticeable impact from a controversial policy announced last week that most people seeking permanent legal residency would have to apply from outside the U.S. The move appeared aimed at reassuring employers and immigrants that the process wouldn't become restrictive. Guidance issued last week by the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, along with a statement from a department spokesperson, said that immigrants looking to get a green card would have to return to their home country to apply, except for in, quote, extraordinary circumstances. Dan Schwartzman, Bloomberg Radio.
And a deadly Ebola outbreak is spreading quickly in Central Africa, where more than 240 people have now died. But former CDC Director Dr. Tom Frieden says the world's not ready for another pandemic.
Even though this strain of Ebola and this Ebola outbreak is not going to cause a pandemic, it's not going to cause a significant risk to large numbers of Americans. It's a stress test, and it's a stress test the world is not doing well at. I would say so far we're failing.
Dr. Frieden on Bloomberg This Weekend. The U.S. has tightened up restrictions for travelers coming from the region and sent resources to Congo. But the response is controversial, given the Trump administration's cuts to global health programs and USAID. Wall Street ended May with main indexes at records, but new jobs data out this week could change that. Bloomberg's Andrew O'Day has details.
We start with Tuesday's reading of posted U.S. job openings in April, forecast to have risen following a strong drop in March. Wednesday, we get the first large-scale employment reading for May, the tally of private sector job creation from paycheck processor ADP. The big reading comes Friday with the Labor Department. The unemployment rate is expected to remain at 4.3%, with total job creation likely tepid, holding below 100,000, with leisure, hospitality, education, and health services leading the gains. Andrew O'Day, Bloomberg Radio.
Wednesday, the Fed's also set to release its latest beige book of economic conditions. That's likely to show U.S. economic activity as uneven, but generally positive across regions. And the San Antonio Spurs are headed to the NBA Finals after beating the Oklahoma City Thunder last night. Game 1 starts on Wednesday. And that's news when you want it with Bloomberg News Now. I'm Monica Ricks, and this is Bloomberg.